Hey everybody, and welcome to The One in Many. This is a show by Antioch Community Church, Ann Arbor, aiming to highlight the many parts of the body of Christ. Whether it's a perspective, a testimony, a teaching, or a revelation, we all have something to bring. Hey everybody, welcome to another show of The One in Many. This week I am joined by Catherine Boyd. Same last name as me, because she is my wife. She is the co-worship pastor. Really the co-everything that I'm involved in, except probably save for my sports writing, which does not benefit from the cat filter, to its detriment, I think. But Catherine, we have been married for about 10 years now. We just celebrated 10 years. The actual anniversary is this month. Yep. I wanted to start today by going back even earlier than 10 years to the year 2007. This is a Ian and Catherine story, but it's really a sort of, I hope, a universal story, sort of. So the year is 2007. I am a senior at the University of Texas, and I am a hardcore Texas football fan. And as a senior, I had this opportunity. As a UT student, you could pay a little extra and get season tickets for football games, which was a really big deal if you're a football fan, because that's a lot cheaper and you get to sit in the student section and all this. And then they would determine where students sat based on their seniority, how long they'd been a student there. So I had been like in the upper deck, and I had a chance to be in a senior group, to create a senior group with some of my friends and get like the primo sideline seats. And it just felt kind of lame to me. Like I think I had enough friends to put together a decent group, but I was like, it'd be really cool if our college group all sat together. So what if we tried to create a group for our whole, like, the church's whole college group, and see how many of us we could pack into one section. And if we're like up in the nosebleeds, whatever, we're still there, at least we're all together, we can have fun in that way. So I set it up on like Facebook at the time, and then like immediately all the cute sophomore girls sign up and join in the group, including Catherine. And so I like create the group on Facebook, I start seeing the feedback, all the cute sophomore girls are signing up for it, and I was like, oh my gosh, jackpot. Which may sound dumb, but me and Catherine got to know each other. I would say probably a lot of the early growing of our friendship came from attending UT football games together. Yeah. And then we also played on the worship team together, and that certainly helped too in a few ways. But yeah, I had a chance to create a little more of an inclusive community, sacrifice something, and lifelong dividends paid as a result.
Right. And it benefited me and my sophomore friends who likely would never have figured out football seating groups. And we got to do the thing that we really wanted to do, which was see the game with friends too, because you made that space, and we were included into that, and it was awesome. And I think that's the thing about community, right, is like everyone wants it. I wanted it. It was football then, but it could be something else another time, and you created a space that it was able to exist. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and it was a real thing, because it'd be like pretty much your whole Saturday.
Oh yeah.
Would get taken up between like getting there, maybe
carpooling,
getting food after or before.
Yeah.
Or like going to a pool or something before or after, because it was
right.
Texas and it was really hot. And then also like anytime it wasn't a home game and it was a road game, it's like, who am I going to watch the road game on TV with?
Totally.
Probably the same people.
Yeah, and I mean, not just our marriage, but lifelong friendships were formed in those times.
Oh yeah.
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 Right. And that's what we want. That's what everyone wants, is to be included and to include too. And not wholly surprisingly, that seems to be what God says, that how people will best thrive is with each other. So we see that in football groups, we see that in church communities, that God has really, throughout Scripture, explicitly and implicitly seems to be suggesting that we are designed to be with each other. Like there are scriptures that tell us mourn with those who mourn, rejoice with those who rejoice. You can't do that by yourself. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I will be also. You can't do that by yourself. And of course, we've heard miraculous stories of people who were truly exiled from community. And like Jesus showed up to them. So of course he can do it. But barring, being imprisoned, I think God is asking us to step out into community and to then be able to better know the fullness of his character.
And even there, I don't know, we took ADS separately, but in my ADS class, we watched this video where this guy shared a story of being imprisoned in another country. I don't remember exactly which one, and I don't know if I should say it, even if I could. But he's imprisoned, and he talks about, I remember him talking about 2 things. One is that most of the time he was extremely isolated to the point of like nearly being insane. And he invented a game called Underwear Ball, where he's like in solitary.
Yeah.
And so he like rolled up his underwear into a ball and would like throw it across the cell. And he made up rules and fake teams with fake players. That's the kind of thing I actually did when I was a kid with not underwear, but like actual sports equipment.
Sure.
And so he had that story, and then he also had some story of having a vision of Jesus visiting him in his cell.
Right.
So he got that like amazing experience of Jesus. Then he also got a lot of not that,
right.
A lot of nothing at all.
Totally.
Just his imaginary friends playing underwear ball.
Oh.
Most of us do a little better than that. Even during the COVID lockdown, usually didn't. I don't know how many people where it came to.
But I think it was
ball.
if we were confused before that about our need for other people and close community that not even Zoom can replace. I think after this last year, hopefully we, especially in our American culture where we're like tempted to go it alone, and I can take a webinar, I can do anything on my own, I don't need anyone else. I think we got a taste of just how important it is to live life with each other. And I know for me personally, over the last year and a half, just realizing that I'm not my strongest when I'm on my own. I can't manifest all of God's giftings unto myself, because we're all just gifted with certain aspects of the character of God. Like I may be good at getting things done and checking goals off of a checklist, which is awesome to advance the kingdom, but I need other people to remind me of God's compassion and of his mercy when I forget it. And I can't on my own, even with the sweetest times in a prayer closet with the Lord, I'm just not going to see the fullness of all that Jesus is if it's just me, or even if it's just us. We can't be to each other what community can be for us and for us individually.
Especially intentional community that's
sure.
looking to help you fill in shortcomings. I actually remember earlier when we were a part of this church, for like the first year that we were here, we were not in a life group because of we were doing like trying to run an alpha course that did not generate community. It didn't generate much of anything. And I think there might have been some other reason or another, but we were not in a life group for like the first year or so.
Yeah.
Then we finally joined a life group. It was like, okay, we don't have anything. We should really be in a life group. We joined the one that Jason and Alex Sudan were leading.
Right.
And early on, I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to behave anymore. around like other adults in this setting. And there was like, I just felt so like, oh my gosh, I haven't realized how many social interaction shortcomings I've been developing or just have not been exposed that should have been exposed if I had been in like an intentional life group.
Right.
During one of the early ones, Jason actually pulled me aside after life group to very gently and lovingly rebuke me for being disruptive in prayer. Where we were like all praying together as
my
guys,
goodness.
and somebody else is praying, and I like stood up and went into another room and was like filling a glass with water or something. I don't know. Something that was like,
Just awareness.
what are you doing? Just,
Yeah.
you have to come out now, wait a minute. So yeah, intentional community, huge, huge difference. The trick of it is that it doesn't just happen. A lot of people like, probably sadly a large number of people never really experience like a truly life-giving community that can like, you know, help you recognize your own strengths, fill in your weaknesses, and do in a way that actually builds you up and makes you feel, you know, stronger and loved and known.
Totally. Yeah, I think one reason for that is that community is messy. It's people trying to be, you know, the image of God to other people. So it's imperfect. I think like if we all enter community or what the community we're already in, we acknowledge that at some point our feelings will likely be hurt and we will hurt someone else's feelings. Probably that cycle again and again in different versions and to different degrees. Because we're just imperfect people and we're all trying to look more like Jesus every day. But that means yesterday we looked less like Jesus and maybe hurt someone's feelings. And I think that there is probably a lot of grace that we can extend to ourselves and extend to each other when we just kind of acknowledge that, okay, this isn't going to be perfect. I am going to have to forgive, and I am going to have to ask for forgiveness through this. And I think if that's like, if you go from there from the outset, you're going to set yourself up for so much success. And if you're already in a community and you haven't had that mindset, if you shift that mindset, you're going to set yourself up to be able to benefit from all of the gifts that community brings, and you'll be able to navigate those things that can feel painful from time to time as we all imperfectly try to build each other up to look more like Jesus.
I have like just a dozen stories coming to the top of my head about struggling to find a community or being included in a community by someone else. I know you had one.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell yours first?
I also have dozens of the same situation. Happens again and again. It just looks a little different every time.
Yeah.
But the big one, the pivotal one, I think in my mind, that always sticks out, dates all the way back to junior high, which hopefully I'm not the only
Where
one
else?
who has a pivotal junior high social story. But I had the same group of friends since I was like in preschool, and we had always just stayed friends. And whether in reality or in my mind, it was a pretty cool group of friends, you know. It could just be that's where I was comfortable, but I thought, okay, this is it. I need to be here. But junior high, you choose electives, you do different things, extracurriculars, and you start to like maybe drift apart from your preschool friends. Some people do dance, but you do band. There's just differences that form.
Is that what happened to you?
Yeah, in a nutshell. No, it wasn't all the same, but there was a rift forming to the point where I kind of like was pushed out of the group pretty abruptly, at least again in my mind. And I mean, I was utterly devastated. And is that hurtful? Yes. Of course that's hurtful. I mean, literally since preschool, that's a lot of years to feel let go from, you know? But I spent a solid year. If you had asked me, do you have any friends? I would have said, no, I don't have any friends. You know, woe is me. I have no friends. But the reality is that there was this whole group of people who would have considered me their friend, But I was so hung up on this one version of friendship with specific people who didn't want to be my friend that I couldn't see this life-giving community that was like inviting me in, inviting me in, inviting me in. And I was like, no. You know, I just was missing that. While I was looking at the greener grass yonder, I was standing in like this field, life-giving field of people around me. And when I finally realized that, I mean, I'm still friends with people that I was friends with as I went into high school and, you know, on to college and everything. But I think a lesson that I learned there was, yes, it's hurtful when your expectations aren't met. And I don't think the solution is to pretend like that's not hurtful. But when we are so stuck in our own whatever expectations, we can really miss a gift that God is giving us. God sees our hurt, and he sees when we feel left out, and he's likely directing us unto life-giving community. But we're probably going to miss it if we're like, la, 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 mindset on this thing of the past or whatever it might be in each different story. And so I think as I seek out community now as an adult, and as I've had iterations of that experience happen multiple times, and this has been just really driven into my mind by the Lord, I think it's like so important that we open our eyes to who is around us now, who texts us, who, you know, reaches out to us, and we make sure we're not missing the body of Christ that God is providing for us right in front of us, because X, Y, and Z ideal standard, it's our own ideal standard, not anyone else's, not the Lord's, you know, just whatever we were thinking was supposed to be didn't pan out.
The Cool Kids Club.
Yeah, but the Cool Kids Club can be different things to different people. It's whatever you think is going to satisfy you. But what is satisfying about, like in this story, a group of people who doesn't want to be your friend? Nothing, no matter how cool they are, you know?
Yep. In college, there were always groups like that. We were both part of this relatively small college ministry.
Yeah.
And there was like one group that I thought of as the Cool Kids group, and I was like buddies with a lot of them, but I always felt like I wasn't quite in.
Yeah.
And I think like later on in college, I found out that like me and my buds that I was closer with, other people saw us as like a cool group that would have been nice to break into, but it was hard to break into. And it was like, you know, oh.
Right.
Didn't realize. One of my friends actually, I shared this at his, he was married a few years ago, and I shared this at his rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
About how my life was changed in part because he brought me into the group, the church's youth group.
Yeah.
And he was so welcoming to me. And I really came alive in high school as a large part of finding Christian peers that helped me to zero in, because in that age from like middle school and early high school, you're like, who even am I?
Right.
You're trying to figure out who you are
Totally.
and become an adult. And I didn't know how to integrate being a Christian with whatever else was going on in my life, and he helped me do that. Later on, after I was more established, and this is what I shared at his dinner, I started to like notice some of the people that he would bring in to hang out with us, and I was like, sometimes I'd be like, these people are kind of weird. Like, how are we always hanging out with like weirdos, or like people that just seem like a little like outcasty? And then eventually I realized, I was like, oh wait, that was you.
Yeah.
They're in the same place as you because you're
Right.
both invited by this generous person that was creating community for people that needed it. I don't know when exactly I realized that, but I got it at some point because I started to try to think in terms of like, how do I be someone that is including and creating space for other people to feel like they're in a community rather than always like chasing
Yeah.
the one that I wasn't in.
Right. Yeah. I think a hard thing about communities and friendships is that it's really natural for people to form, cliques is like the buzzword. You don't want to have cliques. But it's like we're naturally inclined to like have little pods of people that there could be any number of similarities that we form around. Like maybe you have young kids or you're newly married. Maybe you went to the same college. There's any number of things that could initiate a group of people, but the reality is that's kind of what we as people are inclined to do. And so I think it's just important to, again, not have our mentality just be like, no, we don't want that. But to more be like, okay, we're inclined to do that. So how can we do it in a way that is inclusive and that allows people to experience the fullness of community, and that we're never putting on a pedestal whatever this similarity is that we like share with this group over including someone in it. And then, because then that's a way that people get so hurt is when they're not able to jump into a group because they're not married or because they don't have kids. Right. When that just happened to be the lines that were drawn, naturally, but then it's become like the thing. And I think that's like a thing to stay away from. Less than thinking you can never hang out with people with, in your stage of life, but more focusing on not letting that be the goal, like the idol of the group, this thing that, oh no, we have to maintain this level of exclusivity.
Yeah. This is a very difficult thing to navigate.
Oh yeah.
I think there are two sort of decent solutions to it that come to my head right now.
Sure.
And the issue being like, you're going to tend to gravitate towards people that you're already, especially as you get older in life and you have more and more, if you have like kids or a demanding job or any number of other things that put real constraints on your time, you're going to tend to gravitate towards groups of people that you have a lot of shared experiences with, or who it's easy to spend time with.
Right.
Like you may have the college bud where you can catch up every 2 months and it's like your best friends, even though you're barely caught up.
Right.
But day to day, it's hard. So the two solutions that come to my mind are, first of all, be the sort of person that is good at intentionally creating life-giving community. So like be the kind of person that is good at like recognizing where community is occurring.
Yeah.
And like fostering it.
Yeah.
I think because everyone wants it, and I think it's very, some people it's very easy. Some people
Sure.
are just like, they create community so easily. Like my friend Ben was like that.
Right.
Other people, I think, can be a learned skill. For some people, that's probably something that's always hard. Just for some people, social interactions are trickier than others.
Sure.
And it's just, sorry, that's a tough hand to be dealt in life, but it's just how it is for some people, and it's hard. So I think being the kind of person that is developing that skill is really valuable for being like a thermostat rather than a thermometer in Christian community. Like the thermometer tells you what temperature it is. The thermostat sets the temperature.
That's it, yeah.
If you can be a thermostat in terms of, I said that word weird. If you can be a thermostat in terms of creating intentional community, then you can be great in the kingdom of heaven. I would say, and that helps cover for the people for whom it's just never going to be easy.
Right, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like that's what we talked about at the beginning. Is like you can't be the best at everything. Hard as some people may try, like myself, you can't be the best at everything, and so. If you are really good at fostering and forming community, then do it. Everywhere you go, don't stop doing it. Because there are people who, in order to experience the fullness, as much of the fullness of God as they can, need your role in the body to create that community for them to do that.
Yep.
And they're going to offer something to you that you need to best know the fullness of God and all that He has for His people. And so, like, if that's a strength of yours, just do it. And do it all the time at work, at church, in your church community. If you have kids at your kids' school, like, there's people everywhere who don't know what to do, but they'll do it. They'll show up. The second you and your community forming strength start something, they'll be there. And so I would just, I think that, and that's true for every strength, obviously, but God, like, the body of Christ needs each and every one. And so if you have a strength, and as you learn your strength, go get them.
And to that point, like, leaders cannot be leaders without people following them.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't grow as a leader and have a chance. And some people, like, if you're leading something, and you're basically serving people. If you're leading well, you're serving people.
Totally.
And to have people to serve is a gift, and to offer to someone to serve you by being one of the followers, you actually bless the leader because you can help them grow and learn from activating some of their spiritual gifts. The other solution I see is just life groups.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, we want life groups to be the best version of community. We want life groups to make inclusive spaces where people feel like they can be known. Maybe if you don't, I meet so many people in our church, and I find out that they, like, were rock climbing, and they met, like, the Webbers or someone else, or the Foleys, or whoever else, and then they were, like, included in some fun thing.
Totally.
It's so great. That's, like, exactly what we're talking about. But if you're someone that just doesn't have, like, a lot of, like, hobbies or activities that you're a part of, then how are you going to do it? Like, I don't know that I actually have any hobbies outside of church that are very inclusive. Even football has become exclusive for me now, because I'm always, like, watching on my computer and taking notes or tweeting or something that's extremely exclusive. But life groups, it's like, you're going to talk to people.
Totally.
They're going to ask you what's going on in your life. And then all the tough parts about community can be, like, how are you intentional? How do you make sure that people really know what's going on? How do you pray and support people in the things that are going on? Well, life group makes all that easier because you're asking each other those questions and then praying for each other. And so it's like, in that sense, it's stronger than your book club or your...
And I think life group, at least, well, for me, but I think it's fair to say for everyone, it's like a good training ground for extending grace and receiving grace in community. Because the thing, like we've said several times, is that community is messy, and you're going to have to extend grace, and you're going to have to receive grace over and over and over again. And life group is such a good place to work that out, to practice what, Scripture tells us about, okay, if you have a grievance, you take it to your brother, and help. It's a safe place to learn how to not harbor bitterness, but to confront and then to receive confrontation with grace, to forgive quickly and to accept forgiveness quickly when we've sinned, which I can actually say that having been in life group type situations for a while now, like 12 years or something, off and on, but pretty consistently. Like, I can carry that into my workplace. I am less easily offended personally at work because I have just practiced, and I'm not perfect. Like, I get offended easier than I hope I get offended in 5 years from now, but I've practiced being quick to forgive. I've seen people hurt my feelings and apologize. And so then if I'm in a situation where that doesn't happen, I'm just so much more likely to extend grace because I've been in that iron sharpening iron community, which that metaphor, as are all the metaphors in the Bible, is so good because, like, iron sharpening iron isn't like a gentle, caress.
Yep.
But I don't know anything about metalworking, but I assume that the only way iron sharpens iron is through,
Grading.
intense, hitting and pressure and heat and all those things that sound painful, because growing is painful, but not growing is way worse.
So life group, probably a good place to practice trying to be inclusive, obviously.
Totally.
Also, a good place to practice all the things that will invariably go wrong in community. Like, hey, man, you didn't invite me to your birthday party. Everyone else got invited. Is there like something between us that we need to talk about? Or it just hurt my feelings. I know it's your birthday. I don't have a right to be there. I haven't done this particular confrontation, so I'm just making this up. I don't know exactly how that should sound, but
Sure.
whatever it is that comes up, you know.
Yeah, and that would be awkward, right? That would feel awkward.
Yeah.
But
not in
think
front of
about-
everyone, obviously.
Of course. But think about how much more honoring that is than harboring bitterness,
Yeah.
And if you're not sure about bitterness, the Bible has a lot to say about all the pitfalls that come from allowing bitterness to take root. So much better to workshop awkward confrontations in a life group setting where you're regularly inviting Jesus into those places, and you're reading scriptures about forgiveness with each other, and you're reminding each other how important it is. That's the place to do it.
We are hoping to do a show in the coming weeks with Rachel about conflict resolution, which should be really helpful.
Maybe she'll have some more specific tips for if you don't get invited to someone's birthday party, where to go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, I joke, but I think
Well, I mean,
we've all
that
been
is,
in that
yeah.
position.
No, yeah, you like, oh, this thing happened and I was left out. Why? I guess people don't like me.
Right.
I guess I'm an outsider, I guess.
Another beauty of intentional community, like a life group, is when situations like that happen and you don't know what to do. Is this the kind of situation where I need to just like get over it? Or is this the kind of situation where a confrontation is warranted? Your life group, save for blasting a person who's offended you, of course, is a really healthy place to ask people who are more mature in their faith than you, who've walked with Jesus longer than you, who are better at conflict resolution than you. Okay, help me out. My feelings are hurt, and I don't know what to do. That's like another benefit of community, is there are just people who are going to be better than you at things that are going to come up in your life. And when you allow yourself and when you humble yourself, because humility is like the bottom line of really every way that we need to walk with the Lord, is just to remain humble, then you are going to open yourself up to all these resources of people who know more than you about things and can help you through these situations in life that feel cringy but are what is required of us to look more and more like Jesus as we age.
Yeah, those are the great sorts of questions to be, or the great sorts of answers to be giving when people ask questions in life group, like if you break out into 2s and 3s to pray for each other. And what can we pray for you this week, Ian? Don't sit on the, well, I've been feeling bitter or left out with someone else in the church or outside the church because of this situation. That's a great chance to talk that out, and then they can a lot of times your friend, either saying it out loud can help you.
Totally.
Or your friends in your life group can help you with oh, that is lame. You should talk to them and just like try to get to the bottom of this or ask about this, or yeah, dude, that's not a thing. Like,
Right.
You just let that go.
Like, let me know how I can help you get over this, because you need to get over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Let me know.
Very
I'm
diplomatic.
gonna try that with. I want to hear you try that with one of our kids. Oh,
sure
you don't
it'll
have
go
the
over
right.
well.
You don't have the right snack. Let me know how I can help you get over this.
Yeah, words of wisdom. Yeah. Oh, I think another thing about life group and just the image that God gives us of like things being in darkness being brought into light. I know that and rightly so, that is referring to sin being brought into light and not kept in darkness. But again, these intentional communities and close friendships, those are going to be your light places that you need and can bring things into. And like you said, just saying it out loud sometimes, bringing it out, this like kind of shameful bitterness you're feeling, and you're like, I know I shouldn't be mad, but I am mad. Sometimes truly just bringing that to the light, letting it be, admitting, I'm having this ridiculous thought. That's enough. Like for God, he'll come in and he'll remove that bitterness from you because you took that step to just kind of confess, if you will, this like nagging, even if it's just the temptation of bitterness, you know, it's tempting you. You're really wanting to grab onto it. But bringing that into the light of your community has so much power. And sometimes it's not enough. Of course, there are so many things we have to walk long journeys through, but there's a lot of situations, I think, that us on our own in isolation, we go crazy and we can convince ourselves of so many things. But the second we bring it into the light, it's like, you know what? I don't actually need you guys to tell me anything. I got it. It's fine.
If you never have to say something out loud, you can convince yourself of the dumbest, craziest, most irrational stuff. Because I know because I've done it.
Right.
I would even say that, like, things that cause division in the body, like maybe we should expand your understanding of sin if you don't include that, because there's a lot of things in the New Testament about like Jesus telling people like, don't bring your gift or your worship to the temple if you have a grievance with your brother.
Right.
Go settle it and then come back and bring your gift. Or Paul, when he's trying to sort out, like people are arguing about eating meat sacrificed to idols,
Right.
which seems to us as like not a particularly relevant passage. But the point is that some people are like, this is a serious sin issue. Other people are like, this is not a big deal. And Paul's like, do you know what's definitely a serious sin issue? Is for you guys to be divided and breaking up and over anything.
Right.
Like your union should be like a prized value.
That's, yeah, so good.
So that means, you know,
I think that kind of tells us
fighting for your community is up there with any sin issue.
Yeah. And I think that like is eye-opening to a couple of things. One, Paul, via Jesus, the Lord, obviously knew that this was going to be a big thing for people, having grievances against each other and having those become so big, whether in reality or in their minds, that it interfered with their connecting with Jesus. So have that awkward, humiliating conversation about the birthday party, if that's going to be the thing that blocks you from, you know, worshiping Jesus to the fullest at church on Sunday. Like, it seems so hard, but that seems so worth it if it's like going to come between, you know?
Yeah, I can't worship with these people because distrust has grown so high because there were a couple social events that were awkward or somebody wasn't included, and now it's like.
Yeah. And again, like, none of this is to say that it's not hurtful when that happens. Like, none of this is to belittle hurt that happens. It's just to say, don't stay in that place, and it will likely require something of you to be healed from that hurt. I mean, as perfect as it would be if everyone could read our minds and know every time we'd been offended and beat us to the punchline, you know, begging for our forgiveness. Probably 8 times out of 10, the other person has no idea that you're hurt, or they don't understand why. You know, they need, like, maybe they have an inkling, but they just don't get it. Because we all have our own world going on, and it, you know. So I think there's, obviously, if you do know you've hurt someone, please, then it's on you for sure. But I think it's so tempting when we're the ones that feel hurt to feel like the responsibility is always on the other person. But ultimately, that's potentially going to lead you to just hole up in bitterness, because if the other person doesn't even know they've hurt you, they're never going to come apologize. Just like, you know, Ian, if he doesn't know that I wanted flowers on Valentine's Day or something.
I eventually figured that out.
But it's like, am I going to just stew for the next 40 Valentine's Days? Or can I say, hey, it would really bless me if you got me flowers on Valentine's Day. And then I'll probably get flowers every Valentine's Day. Like sometimes it feels like, if someone really loved me, they would know. But the reality is they do love you and they don't know what you want. And so sometimes you're going to have to both be the person that was hurt and the person that initiates forgiveness. And it's hard, but it's so worth it. The fruit is worth the hard conversations and the humility that it requires.
Yep. So I think our action points this week are recognize when you do have life-giving community, because that that is like the greatest gift in life, basically. Fight for it if you don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't always just happen. Some people are good at creating it. If you're good at creating it, do it, create it. If you can get better at it, get better at it. If you're not better at it, know your weakness and attach yourself to people. I think like the persistent widow is not really about this, but I think the persistent widow parable applies, where if you're someone that is not good at forming friendships or like getting into great community, like just go to people and be like, hey, I'd like to be your friend. I'd like to be in your group. I'd like to hang out with you.
Right. And who doesn't want to form a friendship with someone who wants to form a friendship with them?
Yeah.
Like that's that's mutually the most life-giving thing is like.
Yeah, it feels, if someone tells you that, it feels good. You're like, oh, I'm someone that.
Of course I want to do that.
Someone wants to be my friend.
Yeah, right.
It's extremely humbling, obviously, because you're telling someone like, I have this like super basic need in life that I can't get for myself.
Right.
But it's worth it.
Totally.
It's worth humbling yourself to get it. So anyway, recognize if you have community, fight for it if you don't, include others if you do have that community.
Yeah.
There have been occasions in my life where I tried to make an event extra inclusive, and I regretted it.
Inclusive?
Inclusive. I made something extra inclusive, and I regretted it. Like, I can't believe I'm going down this rabbit trail. One time we set up like a going away soccer game when we were moving from one city to another, and we included a bunch of people, and it made it really hard to coordinate games.
Oh, sure.
And then some like strangers came in and joined the game, and it was like, yeah, the more the merrier. And then this guy was like a total ball hog, and he just like soured the whole thing for me. That happens sometimes. Or you include other people in your seating group, and you get a chance to get to know your future wife.
Right.
Way outweighs. Usually it's been more like that.
Yeah, of course.
So that'll be all for this week of the One in Many. We'll see everybody in a week or so when the next episode comes out. Maybe on conflict resolution. I don't know. I haven't nailed down the schedule with Rachel Alonso yet, but we'll see what happens.